And the pitch. Swing and a base hit to left center field. Hank Amelia's going to score. This game is over. On an RBI hit by Mickey Rose.
Thanks for taking the time to download and listen to the Philadelphia Baseball Review podcast. I'm Patrick Gordon, founder and executive editor of the Philadelphia Baseball Review. Our mission is to cover baseball at all levels throughout the Philly region, with a particular focus on promoting the amateur, high school, and college ranks. Our aim is to tell the untold baseball stories across the Quaker City. So please be sure to follow me on Twitter if you're not already at pgordonpbr. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you may be listening. Also, leave us a review. And be sure to visit PhiladelphiaBaseballReview.com, where you can sign up for our daily newsletter. Now, let's get into today's show. My guest today is one of the top up-and-coming names in baseball media. Her sense of humor, wit, and personality make her a must follow on social media, and she's somebody who I firmly believe to be the future of baseball journalism. Resume includes stints with FanDuel, MLB.com, most recently with NBC Sports Bay Area, where she covered the A's and the Giants. Our old friend Gabe Kapler. A warm welcome to you, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Thank you. And that intro kind of gets me a little intimidated, but I appreciate all the nice words. But I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Jess. Thank you for coming on. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things here, including your thoughts on baseball media, the landscape of baseball. You know, we have this potential stoppage looming and some other topics. But in prepping for this and knowing you, it became clear you and I could probably talk for hours on a bunch of topics. It'd be fun, engaging. I'm sure the listeners would love it. And that's a tribute to you more so than me. But for those unaware, how did you become interested in baseball media? How did you get your start?
So I loved baseball since I was little, and I was lucky enough where my parents never forced it on me. They said, hey, we need an extra outfielder on your brother's team, go play. And I got hooked. And from then on, I actually knew rather early on I was not going to be the first MLB baseball player, first female MLB baseball player, unfortunately. And that wasn't because of my gender. It was because I couldn't hit 100-mile-an-hour balls, and I was 5-0. Still am 5-0. One day we'll hit my growth spurt, but that's neither here nor there. So I thought, well, how can I express how much I like this game? And go from there. Now, that was back when there was only really sideline reporters that had female roles in the game. And I was okay with that. So I was like, cool, I'm going to be Erin Andrews. Let's do that. And that's what was cool is the moment I started, I was like, well, I don't have to just be the Erin Andrews of the world. And this is no disrespect to sideline reporting. Some of my closest friends do it. And I know it's a very difficult job, but I thought, why does it always have to be that role? So I said, why can't I be an analyst? For sure, I'm not going to be on the same panel with like Dallas Braid and Michael Moore saying, I have the exact same MLB experience. But if you look in the press box, to the left of me, to the right of me, we all pretty much had the same baseball background. Me, maybe even more, because I played baseball with the boys up until my sophomore year of high school, and then I switched to softball. So I don't know why, I didn't understand why I couldn't be up there with them. But I also wanted to make it fun too, right? And I thought my questions make me, when I just have all these random thoughts sometimes, and I'm just like, well, wait, why is he doing it this way? And sometimes when you ask the player that or ask the manager that you get one or two reactions like, okay, wow, you're certainly paying attention, but also why would you ask this question? It's a quirky thing, whether it's like their approach at the plate or sometimes, the way Matt Chapman is, his butt isn't always square to the ground when he's taking infield or when he's getting ready to play and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of pick their brains, but make it fun. Why were you chewing a specific type of bubble gum, or, you just had a wedding in the off season. Was that more stressful, or was your plate appearance against Tim Lincecum more stressful? I want to know these things. So for me, it was just taking one question and developing it into making it 5 questions or 5 stories and stuff like that. And I think social media really, truly changed my life, and Twitter alone became kind of my platform. And I wanted people to have fun with it, but I also wanted them to trust my knowledge and trust the fact that I was asking the right questions and everything like that. And engaging with my followers was super, super important because you want to know what they want to see. You want to know what they want to read. You want to know what they want to watch and everything like that. And you want them to ultimately come out to the event itself too. Like you want them to have FOMO when you're covering a game that makes MLB happy, makes the team happy. It makes my clicks go up, whether they hate the article or not. The boss is happy because they're clicking. So everything like that. You want to be well-rounded in all aspects of social media. Even if I'm just taking a selfie on the field and then I get, photobombed by Tony Kemp, that's like a dope thing. You want people to be like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. Like the players can approach her and do stuff like that. So I wanted to hit every single, not just demographic, but platform and the way that you produce it and the way that you show it off and everything like that. So that's ultimately how it happened. It was me trying to be a mainstream fan, but also be approachable as a journalist, trusted as a journalist, and find that balance, which ultimately I'm still struggling with to this day because sometimes I'd be a little bit too fanboyish. Sometimes I'm too comedian. Sometimes I'm too journalistic. So I love being able to find the balance of all of those and deliver it. And that makes my job that much more fun and challenging.
No, and one of the things that drew me to you was the fun aspect of it. You and I were mentioning before the show sort of this idea that, baseball media is so traditional, it's so conservative, it's so, by the book and baseball as a whole is that way. And I think what you bring is this interesting perspective that, especially the younger generation can, fall in line with and follow. And, I think that kind of goes along with what you're talking about, making this a bit more fun and palatable to some people. If you can get some fans or some people maybe that aren't baseball fans, but to follow something that was interesting or funny that you said that may pull them into the game, like at the end of the day, that's a win for everybody.
I agree. And one of my favorite things to tell people is, I have a lot of girlfriends who don't like sports, and that's not a stereotype. It's just kind of how it is. And if I get a couple of tickets to an A's game, I always it's different now because Canna's not on the team, but Mark Canna will approach the plate. The man has beautiful music. He's very pro female musical artist. So he had Aretha Franklin last year for his walk-up song. And you have a girlfriend with you have a friend with you who doesn't care about baseball. They know the Aretha Franklin song and they're like, why is that playing? And you sit them down, you tell them why. You say, Mark Canna loves female artists and he wants to embrace them. Sometimes he's just in the mood. He had Madonna as his walk-up song, Like a Virgin. You have to want to know why that guy has that. And one time he actually signed a potato. He autographed a potato. And my editor at the time texted me. He goes, I need for you to get an exclusive and ask Mark Canna about the potato. I can promise you the other journalists around me would have never done that. For me, I was like, say less, bro. I got you. I ran to the locker room and I was like, can I ask you about this? He's like, and he had fun with it. He said, you never forget your first signed potato. It was a great article. It was a great headline. People from The Athletic complimented me on it. So it was good. And I thought it was important because it goes to show it was fun. Mark Canna remembered me forever after asking him a question. But you also want to know, that's a good starting point too. My girlfriend that I was sitting by, it's like, well, this guy is going to be your new favorite player because I talked to him about autographing a vegetable. Yeah. And then from then on, they followed Mark Canna the rest of the season because they heard that little thing. They couldn't care less about the game. They just knew Mark Canna was the guy who signed a potato. And that was great too. So something as small as that will fill a butt, put a butt in the seat, and have my friend text me like, hey, what's the deal with Mark Canna? And same thing. I give them updates just because they want to know, but it's never baseball updates. It's like, hey, how's Marcy, his wife, or, what's his walk-up song right now? He had Mac Dre's his walk-up song. And he was, of course, Mark Canna was great about, he's a lesbian and gay advocate and ally and trans ally. And you want to know about that stuff. So then I want to be winded and then tell you their slash line. I want you to tell you all the quirks, all the great things that make that person great, and then be like, oh, right. And they're really struggling against lefties right now. And that's what I think is important. I feel like you can look up at everything on the baseball reference page, but the little quirky fun stuff to make the other people fall in love with the sport makes it good. And you think about that with NBA, they do a beautiful job. You want to know what Ron James is wearing after the game, and the pop culture stuff, the fashion and everything like that. I think MLB is getting into it, but I think it's going to be a while. But that stuff is what makes it important to me.
Yeah, I mean, making them a human being, first and foremost. Yes, they're great athletes. They're this, they're that. But the fact that you've brought somebody down to a human level almost. And I think sometimes people struggle. They see athletes, they think that they're on a pedestal and that they're totally different. And the fact is, yeah, there's some jackasses out there, but for the most part, yeah, they're just like you and me. And yeah, they want to talk about these funny things and the potato story, right? I think that's great. And yeah, if it gets a couple fans, that's even a bigger win. It's funny, this thing came across on Instagram I saw earlier today, Barstool Sports. I don't know where this came from. The top 10 female singers of all time. And they have Ashley Simpson as number 7. I know that's neither here nor there, but I just had to throw that out because you mentioned the female vocalist and stuff. Oh, it's a very interesting list. I don't know if I agree with it, but
it kind of sounds like one of those, those maps they show like what your most famous fast food is in your state.
Yeah.
Never correct. They just want people to get pissed off. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, I think Ashley Simpson is thrown in there just to aggravate people.
Yeah.
Now, look, I know
I'm actually really aggravated now. Thanks. That like really upsets me.
But what, did Ashley Simpson's number 7?
There we go. Or just on the list.
Oh yeah, don't even get me. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
Now I know multiple kick-ass women in sports media that are doing some fantastic things. Shout out to Temple University's journalism program where I teach. But yet too often, bros specifically, it's funny talking Barstool Sports here. Think everything that females do in media is based on looks, right? And that's how you advance. But it really cheapens you as a professional, and you know this, right?
Right.
So you dabble in creating these witty T-shirts with baseball slogans. I've seen them before. One that jumps out that I've recently seen. Oh yeah, name 3 players, right?
Yeah.
So that shirt, can you talk a little bit about what that slogan symbolizes, the meaning behind it, and why it's important?
So I actually, I developed that one myself, and it was Hit Factory on Instagram, and they personally reached out and said, we want to make some more female friendly shirts. And I want to wear cute shit to a baseball game as a fan. I don't like wearing like A's gear if I'm going to an A's game, not just because of the journalistic part. I don't like wearing team gear. I don't know why, just something I don't like. So I was like, what can I do to kind of, make it fun? And I hate when people, this is no disrespect, but I've seen the shirts that say like, I probably know more about baseball than you. And it's like for a girl, and it's may not even be true. Right. So then my thing was, why not lean into, name 3 players? Because when I go on dates, all these other things, when I tell them what I do for a living, it's either is Buster Posey cool or I get quizzed. And one quiz, and it was the funniest story ever. I was living in Reno, and this guy kept it in his mind that I was working for MLB Network, that I was on TV, which goes to show like how much they think women are only supposed to go on TV and that's it. But I was working for Cut 4 at the time. I was writing articles for them. And he goes, he didn't have to finish the question. This was when Chris Davis had his 4th consecutive 247 year. And before the guy even finished his sentence, he goes, oh, then what's Chris Davis's? And I was like, batting average 247. And I went off on him. I was like 2 white wines deep. It's fine. But I said, why are you asking me a question that's on the bottom Sports Center ticker? That's not even an actual good quizzed question.
Right.
And then he goes, why have I never seen you on TV? And I was like, because you obviously don't pay attention when I say I write for MLB.com. And that's so it was a whole thing. So it's stuff like that. And people, of course, like there was one guy I made this joke about Chris Taylor, how Chris Taylor goes off in the postseason. And I kind of compared him to like a pumpkin spice latte, how we don't really hear about him during the regular season. And boom, he goes off in the postseason, literally complimenting him. And somebody said, oh, well, you're wearing this name 3 players shirt. You can't even do it. And it's like, that's fine. You want to make fun of whatever. So for me, it was kind of like an 8 Mile moment where I'm going to tell you everything you're already going to probably bash on me before you actually do it. Right. And then that way you're whatever. Right. So it's more than just name 3 players. It's let's get this out of the way before you can get a big ego and try to quiz me. I don't want to approach it saying like, I'm going to know more about sports than you, and let's flip it the other way. And then I made the joke, covering the A's, not a lot of people can name 3 players on that team. So It was kind of like, why don't you name 3 players on the team that I cover and I've covered for the last 3 seasons? And that was part of the conversation starter as well. And I also knew that I knew enough about the game to confidently wear it. and then show like this is the bullshit that women have to deal with and everything like that. And it's, you know, like I said, I look to the left, look to the right, I mean the press box, and if they're the men that I'm sharing that with have less baseball playing experience than I do. And
Sure.
you flip it and you go on a panel with certain former players, they're asking you questions. So why is it any different from that part? You know, we hired Dontrell Willis to be our analyst over at NBC Sports Bay Area. And while he, of course, didn't play for Oakland, he's a Bay Area guy. And he said he picked my brain. He's like, Jess, I can't wait to learn from you. Imagine a former All-Star World Series guy, two-way player saying, Jess, I can't wait to learn from you. And that's no different than me if I were to cover Dontrell being like, hey, your weird, wacky windup, tell me about that. Or how are you so successful at the plate and everything like that. So interesting from that point of view and all of that. So that's where it kind of stood. And I'm just like a smart ass too. Like that's just literally who I am. I hate I add, of course, filters and stuff on social media. Who doesn't? But for the most part, you're getting me across all platforms. And I think that's important just for me to go to sleep at night. And it's good for being approached. I want my followers to approach me. I want job opportunities to present themselves. And of course, I want players to be comfortable with me so I can interview them. And I feel like that's part of it as well. And like if I help social media people in the process, it's great too. And I didn't get any money from that part. It helped a small business and I was happy to do it. And it was more female friendly and they wanted to help out women and all of that. So I leaned into it a little bit.
No, I love it. And I think it's a great slogan. And, you know, again, having worked with a ton of female students who have gone on and done some outstanding things, you know, it's great to see this pushback.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for far too long, there's been the stereotype of, oh, you must be moving on because of some reason. It's like, hey, no, I probably know more than you, or I do know more than you. And I'd like the kind of in your face part of that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I love you've talked about in the past is this importance of authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you gave an example of how early in your career, this was on another podcast or interview you had, your mom overheard you on TV and didn't recognize it was you because the flow and the delivery was too stubborn.
Yeah.
It wasn't you, right?
Yeah.
How challenging do you find it to balance this line of being authentic while also upholding this old school thought media, how a person should behave, look, act, etc.?
Kind of like what I said earlier, it's a challenge, but I'm up for it. And obviously the first time you go, like, especially with NBC, the first time I went on TV, I was just nervous. I wanted to get all the facts right. There are certain times I can't like jokingly talk about AJ Puck's injury. Like I don't want to be, that's like a dick move. Right. And you want to be comfortable in relaying the message that Bob Melvin or the Paparesta, the head trainer, gave you and stuff like that. So you want to ultimately find a balance. And what I did was I watched the Dontrell Willises and the Dallas Braydens of the world. And, you know, Dallas Braden would be like talking. When a ball goes over the fence, he says, next stop, Pound Town. Dontrell Willis is dropping terms like spicy. And Dallas Braden even called the A's bullpen, obviously not this past season, but the season prior, he called it sexual. And it's like, I want to be able to express how I feel about something in the exact same way. And I know I have tendencies to like run my mouth and be inappropriate, but I also know you can't just drop F-bombs on TV. So for me, I like the challenge of it. I want people to leave, whether they meet me or see me on TV, being both entertained and knowledge. They want you left learning something. So I just like the challenge of it. So I'll start off and I make sure you obviously work with the host very well and the producer well. You want to make sure you find the balance of that. If it's an injury report, pretty much zero humor should be involved. I feel like that's just not just journalistic integrity. You want to make sure that person's fine, especially if you watch them as much as you do and all of that. But at the end of the day, too, you are considered talent. You want to be fun and all of that. So I know for a lot of the stuff that I write, when I produce some of these things, I want to make sure that somebody's going to be entertained by it. So then if I write it and I love it, I'll go on and be like, hey, can I please just like go on TV and talk about this really quickly? So just like kind of fun to find the challenge too, because that way you're ever changing. And, you know, like one minute I was on talking to Bob Melvin about September 11th, because he was on the World Series team that year with the Diamondbacks.
Yep.
there's no joking when it comes to that at all. And then
Yeah.
2 seconds later, I'm going to go back on talking about a fun story. And I, had a one-on-one with Matt Olson's high school coach. So you want to challenge yourself. You want to better yourself in that. And you never know what your future is going to hold. And you want to make sure that you're able to mold to what the place wants you to. But when it came to that example I gave you, my mom was like, babe, you did great. But like, what was that? She literally
Right.
she didn't recognize my voice. She didn't recognize, like, she had to even look differently because of the way that I was kind of zombie-like and trying not to, and I get it, I was trying not to forget things and I was nervous as hell. And I had no reason to be. I knew the material. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I did it that way. So I feel like that's important too. And just being authentic is just good for your soul, because even if I were to come on here today and was 100% full of shit, maybe you wouldn't know that, but I wouldn't be able
Right.
to go to bed because I was like not being myself. Or even if I go on a date and it's an awful date, I don't care if they didn't like me, like at least as myself, I can sleep at night, So
Sure.
it's kind of like from that. And then especially in this industry, it's tough, man. It is so tough. And I want people to understand that it's not just an Instagram filter and a 20-second hit and a cute outfit and, oh, I got a fist bump with Tony Kemp. Boom. That's a day. That is not what it is. And I want
Right.
people to know the bullshit that I've had to endure and the stuff that I've seen, because there's no way I'd be able to be as authentic if it was all puppy dogs and candy canes and unicorns and marshmallows. That's not reality. And I think that's important for people to know that. But I think from then on, I needed to go through it too. And it wasn't just like my mom saying it. I think from then on, it was like, yeah, be yourself. You have to be smart and you have to be a good journalist. And you're going to F up sometimes, but remind yourself that you're where you need to be. The material. They wouldn't put you on TV if you didn't. So
Sure.
add some more of your personality to it. And then you get remembered that way too. So I think that's very important.
Now, Jess, is there one particular thing you wish, from a career perspective, that you could go back and either change or do over?
Oh, I've never been asked that question. To change or do over. So there was one situation. I had to host A's pregame live. I found out an hour before because our host was stuck in traffic. He couldn't make it. I wish I would have been more confident in what I needed to do. Because like the first 30 seconds, I was like talking out of my ass about trying to make a joke, and it wasn't even funny. I think AJ Puck got promoted, and I was like, "Oh, AJ Puck and I both got promoted today," and it was like, I know there weren't crickets, but there might as well have been. I think it just would have been to like trust myself. And I went on with Dave Stewart, who was just like, you got this. I was like, do I got this, Dave? I don't know. And he was like,
Right.
yeah. I was like, why couldn't I have that much confidence in myself that Dave Stewart could have in me for my second TV thing ever? And I was hosting, scared to death. So I think that probably would have been it. And even then, I picked it up after the first 5 minutes, and it was fine. And actually that was the first time I went on TV with Ray Fosse. And I wish I would have tried a little bit harder to become closer to him. I think that would have been a cool thing too.
I think for those people listening that want to get involved in baseball media and, really kind of be a part of this, it's important. We all mess up, right?
Yeah.
Myself, everybody is going to have
Oprah fucked
those
up, dude. Oprah messed up.
Exactly. Every one of us is going to have those times where you ask a question that just doesn't come out right, or you're just put on the spot with the camera and you just freeze up. It's normal. And I just think it's good to hear from professionals sort of, hey, yeah, I've screwed up too.
Yeah.
I don't
think I'll ever freeze. I think I'll just be the person who says random stuff.
Right.
So don't worry.
Talks your way out of it.
Exactly. And I will say, Oprah did say once that the reason why she's confident, when she's like, everything I can or will ever do, and it is in regards to screwing up, has already been done before. You think of Anchorman teleprompter stuff, like that is an actual thing that happens. So knowing that we've all screwed up, it's like knowing it's like even the best in the business has done it before.
Now, fans and readers, probably don't know, baseball fans and readers probably don't know this as much as you and I, but the last 2 years, it's been difficult to cover baseball, right?
Yeah.
Restrictions on us, because of COVID. Here in Philadelphia, the clubhouse was totally off limits.
Ours was too. I don't even remember what a locker room looks like.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, the press box was only like 10 people.
Mhm.
It was the same, 10 outlets getting credentialed. Thankfully, that opened up the second part of this past year. But, 95% of our interactions are done through Zoom. That hurts us. That hinders our ability as journalists to really read the clubhouse,
Yeah.
get to build relationships with the players. It just makes our jobs more difficult. What was your experience in Oakland covering the A's? I'm fearful clubhouse access, could be permanently restricted or limited going forward.
I'm right there with you because my favorite part when I write an article is the observations of the clubhouse. And one of my favorite openings or leads, I should say, that I ever did was like when Chris Davis, with a K, of course, and Blake Trinan would play basketball with this little basketball game above Trinan's locker. And just like Chris Davis is this quiet guy, but you were able to see like who he actually is around his friends. And Blake Trinan's very serious too, but they're also approachable in the clubhouse and just like the inside jokes and just how they're feeling. And even Sean Manaea, after he had a really tough wild card game in 2019, how depressing it was to see him was so imperative to story tell, and so I did the best I could, and
Right.
I know we only had 60 games in 2020, but it might as well have been 162 because I was so exhausted by the end of that season. Mind you, I had 2 podcasts and I was covering the A's. It was a lot, but
Sure.
I think that's what was so important. And then if you take a step back, if we're all watching it on TV, how are we any different than what the fans are doing? So
Right.
that's kind of important too. And I mean, there were a lot of positives too. I feel like, it made me understand that technology is certainly of the future. I could put a Zoom recording together in my sleep. I had to utilize social media a lot to develop sources and contacts, just to be comfortable on camera. Actually, it helped all of that stuff too. And how everybody was able to this is like my studio now, this behind me, and just stuff like that. We're able to utilize it. So there's a lot of toughness there, but I think that human interaction was the most tough. And of course we got to able to go on the field, I think halfway through the season this season.
Yep, same here.
And it was the first time I saw the players were excited to see us. And you know how they feel about the media. It's very hit or miss. But
different in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Different in Philadelphia than Oakland, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. And they were just very like, oh my gosh, there's people here. And, I pride myself on being very popular on social media too. So like the guys were just stoked to meet me in person, and
Sure.
vice versa. Like Tony Kemp walked up to me and gave me a fist bump. And then Mark Canna made fun of my leather pants and like all these things, like little things you had to do. And you couldn't do that if you were sitting in the press box the entire time. And it kind of made me awkward. I'm a very social person and I forgot how to talk to players. Like I forgot. And then like even the communications people, they were like, oh, you can go approach them, whatever. I was like, oh, right. Like I forgot that we did that. And it's been like a year and a half since we've done it. So that was like retraining yourself and all of that. So it was certainly tough. And just getting used to this, the small, I'm not saying wearing a mask was a small restriction, but we weren't used to that, and then it was ever changing too, like testing and then no testing. And then like I had to get vaccinated and in order to do my job, which was, I was happy to do it, but it's just crazy that we live in a world where that was required. And all of that. And then just seeing COVID affect the guys and, because with the A's in 2020, they had a COVID situation. There was a hurricane. They, of course, were dealing with racial injustice, police brutality, and everything you can imagine what happened in 2020. And it wasn't just COVID. Of course, there was a delay because of MLB versus the league, or the players versus the league and everything. So that alone was a whole thing. You had to become a journalist. It wasn't baseball. It was researching what the fuck COVID meant. And you had to research what these bargaining agreements, if you want to call it that, were, and listening to the players have a voice, which I thought was a beautiful thing. And so I feel like COVID was a small part of it all. And, same, even with the coverage, you wanted to be able to see how the players are reacting when you only get a certain piece, and players know how to turn it off and on the moment they get out on the field, compared to the clubhouse and all of that. So it was a lot. And I'm even sweating thinking about it. So just how difficult it was to deal with. And, you wanted to be there so bad. And just like as somebody who thrives on a baseball field and at the park, I missed it,
Yep.
and I was worried about the guys, like, how are they going to freaking play without fans? And that was a thing too. So everything you could imagine, the emotions you would imagine you went through were legit. And then you're isolated while dealing with it all. So it was tough. It was very tough.
Yeah, it was, in my 15 some years of covering baseball, definitely one of the more bizarre, more difficult things to do. It's easy to write the game story, right?
Yeah.
The game, the A's beat the Angels 9-6. It's easy to do that. In the fourth inning, this happened, seventh inning, that happened, whatever, and get a quote or two and do like an AP story, right?
For sure.
But that's not what you do. It's not what I try and do. We try and do things a little bit differently. And, without that access, you can't get, you were mentioning the potato story earlier, right? You wouldn't be able to get that necessarily.
What if I never got to ask Mark Cannon about the potato?
What do we do, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What I asked you earlier, what would you go back and change about your career? What's your proudest moment in this industry? What made it special for you? What would you say?
My proudest moment. I think there was one in particular because I lost my dad when I was 19, and the first and last A's game we ever went to, Eric Chavez hit a home run, and it was the reason why I fell in love with the A's was this home run in particular. I looked at the program. There was randomly a program on the ground that somebody had purchased and dropped, but I picked it up, and I saw that Eric Chavez and I shared a birthday. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's my new favorite player. And not to mention, it was the same week I switched from first to third base because I was not getting any taller, but my arm was good. So I switched to third base. And fast forward a bunch of years later, my first home opener, the A's, of course, were hosting the Angels, as they always do. And Eric Chavez, during the opening series, was going to throw out the first pitch. And I was covering that game for the first time. I looked down at my phone, and my editor said, "Your dad would be very proud of you." And
that's awesome.
And I think just that, not to mention, it was also the last time I ever would see Tyler Skaggs play in person too. And he made like a funny joke about how Oakland's so beautiful this time of year. And it just made me laugh because it's like, we all know what people think of the Coliseum and all of that, seeing Mike Trout just randomly walk up to the A's groundskeepers and shoot the shit. And Albert Pujols just, everybody just in awe of him. It was just a cool moment for me. And I think that was probably it. Like realizing like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And the dad thing. And I Bernie leaned with Coco Crisp that day and introduced myself to people. And it was probably one of the most beautiful days ever. Weather was great. Like everything you could imagine. Like my hair stayed curly, like all the good things you could actually want happened. And so, yeah, I think Chris Davis hit a home run too. So it was like, okay, this is good.
See, it's funny, Jess. We're lucky to be involved with, something we love and to do it on a daily or almost daily basis. We become, desensitized to things like talking to these star players. You see Mike Trout or Pujols or Bryce Harper, and you can fist bump them or shoot the shit a little bit. Things like having access to the field. My son, he's 7. He's blown away by the fact that, his dad stands, behind the cage at batting practice. The things that people get blown away by, for you and I, are kind of common at this point. Is there still something, though, that's small or odd or trivial that, still kind of brings it back for you? I know for me, this was 3-4 years ago. I was covering the Phillies up at Fenway in Boston. And I remember this was like 2 hours after the game. I filed my story, did what I needed to do. And I was like, I'm going to walk around here and just kind of let the moment sink in. Like, I am covering a ball game in Fenway Park. This place is beautiful. It's nighttime. If you've been to Fenway, it's in the middle of like the neighborhood right there on Kenmore Square and all. It's awesome. And it just was like a moment to let it all sink in, to the point where I think security tried to chase me. Somebody tried to chase me out of there. Is there a moment like that for you, though, where you just kind of are like, wow, this is incredible, I'm doing it, but it's something that's like small or trivial?
Believe it or not, it's when the A's play the Yankees. So when the Yankees are in town, it's obviously a big series because even this last season, it was important, but every season it feels like the A's win that series at home. So despite what people think about the Yankees, like Aaron Judge is always very beloved because he's a Northern California guy when he's there. But just to like see, Giancarlo Stanton kind of walk around and you see how big he actually is and how much history that team has. I think it's such a beautiful thing. So I think when they're in town, it kind of hits me like,
Right.
wow, like this is like a legit, I'm not taking anything away from the A's or any of the other teams that they're ever playing, but I feel like that for me is pretty cool because, obviously growing up an actual A's fan, you remember the flip from Derek Jeter and you just, the Joe Torre, A-Rod, that cover of them all shirtless, like they're the team everybody loved to hate except for Derek Jeter, right? And all of that. And that's what you thought of. You thought of the Bronx, you thought of all that. So when they come to town, that's pretty big for me. Or even something as small as like getting a source and tweeting it out and everything like that. That's super, super cool. Or when I was anytime like a player knows me just personally and they walk up to me and hug me, that's really cool for me. And it's like, oh wait, this person's like a Major League Baseball player, but I happen to be his kids happen to call me Auntie Jess. Like, it's just like that, those little things are kind of crazy and stuff like that. So those types of things, like I need to kind of remind myself, because I'm sure we feel like we take it for granted sometimes and not always on purpose. Like sometimes it's crazy and it's, you have the routine and everything like that. And sometimes just one of those days where you say, okay, manager availability done, game done, post game done, and you go home. So there's sometimes where it's a job, but luckily those are quite rare for me.
Yeah. There was one time too, I remember, where, I don't get starstruck easily and it's rarely with ball players, but Alex Rodriguez growing up was always, my favorite. I remember him, particularly with Seattle and then the Texas years and then the Yankees. And, I ended up, ESPN was doing a game at Citizens Bank and I was like, man, I want to talk to him because I don't want to do a story. He's an idol of mine. Growing up, he was one of my favorite players. I need to talk to him. So I I hung outside the cafeteria at Citizens Bank. I was like, all right, the ESPN crew has to go through here. And just to, fist bump him. And I asked, the one question I had for him was, the 1996 All-Star game where I was with my father for the practice day, the home run derby and all that the day before, what was it like to play in that game? And what do you recall? What do you remember? And he gave me 2 or 3 minutes of his time.
Oh, wow.
And I walked away like my ego couldn't get through the press box. Yeah. I was so
you thought you were A-Rod there for a second. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I was like blown away. I was like, this is it. Like I've accomplished like everything I've ever wanted to do.
I feel like that's good too, because I get nervous to approach A-Rod. I've seen him many times and I've been nervous to talk to him. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other player was Jim Thome, one of the best gentlemen, human beings that you will ever meet. Again, when I was growing up, I was a fan of his. I looked up to him, and then to cover him at the end of his career here in Philadelphia, but then also the Hall of Fame stuff. We inducted him into the Wall of Fame here in Philadelphia, and to get to know him a little bit. He's another person that, he doesn't carry himself like A-Rod does. A-Rod's kind of, there's a different aura about him, if you will. But he was another person where, wow, this is pretty cool. Like the two players that I've idolized growing up, I've had the chance to speak with and or interview. Mm-hmm. It's so cool doing this. And, when you talk to people, especially here in Philly with Bryce Harper, you're like, wait, you get to talk to Bryce Harper?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal,
That's how it is when I would talk to Buster Posey too. Like people are like, I was like, oh, right. That's the thing. Like sometimes, yeah.
Now, how do you see the future of baseball media, right? Like what excites you and what scares you about the direction we're headed with regard to coverage of the game? I
feel like as the thing that I'm excited the most about, just to kind of start this on a happy note, I feel like we're gonna be able to cover it in so many different ways, and like I love that I feel like I'm kind of sometimes the guinea pig of it all. Like there's times where I'm doing like a selfie interview and it still does well, or very impromptu interviews. Doesn't always have to be on television. Obviously, YouTube's blowing up, so you can have more creative freedom. I feel like that's certainly important. It's not always just a one-on-one interview or a scrum. You could just like walk up. Dallas Braden did this beautiful thing. It was Daniel Mengden who was starting on the mound, and Dallas Braden walked out with Daniel Mengden onto the field to do an interview. That never happens. And that's with the trust of Dallas. That's with the trust of Mengden. That's with, everything. And that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Right.
And I feel like that's what's cool about it too. I feel like a lot of the media personalities are becoming up with the players too, like they like, and Barstool Sports, like they go to games, they get a lot of coverage, or when A-Rod's there, he's going to get a lot of coverage too. And I feel like that's something to pay attention to as well, because you want people who are covering the game that have a good reach, that are respected and everything like that. I think I'm a little nervous about like the old school stuff, but I think about Bob Melvin, who's obviously an old school player, and he embraced like the 2020 weird rules very well. So, but they're not all going to be Bob Melvins like that.
Right.
So I think I'm really nervous in the next few years, not just the players, but some of the media is going to they're going to kind of forget about the respect that the old school game has. And I mean, we saw people like, Brett Boone getting pissed off about that, like not embracing the transitions of the game, which I have a love-hate relationship with. The game's going to change. But you need to respect the actual game itself, because we obviously know Manfred's trying to experiment in certain ways. And I understand why he's doing it. Doesn't mean I like that he's doing it.
Sure.
And I think instead of that, and obviously with the CBAs coming up, we're going to see really what the players like and don't like. And maybe I am full of crap and they're like, nope, we love all the old school stuff. Because I mean, there's a lot of players that are off the record telling me that they are actually okay with some of the things that they're trying to implement. Obviously not everything, and all of that. But I think another thing that I'm actually really excited about is like pop culture in baseball. I hope that we embrace it a lot more. They're great Instagram accounts that are promoting and showboating what these guys are wearing when they walk into the field, like what Jock Peterson's wearing heading into it, like designer stuff, like the sexiness of the game that we need to pay attention to, because it's so successful for other sports as well. So luckily I think there's more positives on the horizon as opposed to the latter.
So tell me though, you have to think that 7-inning doubleheaders are a terrible idea. Tell me you're with me on that.
I'm 100% with you, because the first one that I thought was that the doubleheader is, it's so stupid. But I will say, to know that Shohei Ohtani was the first player to ever start on second base in the history of the game is hilarious.
That's another stupid rule though.
It's a stupid rule, but it's funny that because the future superstar of the game, he was the guinea pig for that.
Right.
That's funny. That's funny.
It is. This is
funny,
where
that's funny, like a joke. Like that's a joke. Like that's
right.
Stupid. Yeah.
This is where too, like I don't envy the spot of Rob Manfred, and
I don't either.
And, like he needs to change. Things do need to happen to, again, as you and I have discussed, to get the younger fans in. But I don't know if the Ghost Runner or the 7-inning doubleheaders. Thankfully, from what I've been told, I think all of this is off the table. At least the 7-inning doubleheaders are off the table.
They're for sure done.
Yeah, but the robo umpires. I mean, to me, look, as the purist, I know the game needs to change a bit. Yes, there's a lot of umpires that are bad at their job, to say the least.
This season feels like it was a little bit way worse than usual.
Yeah, it did. Well, I think that Twitter account, I'm going to get the name wrong, but Umpire Score or whatever.
Oh, yeah, the scorecard. Yeah. You
have to follow that. And I think you see, who is really bad at their job. But
I have a conspiracy theory behind it.
What is it?
That
Tell us.
They're bad on purpose. So which is kind of weird because they want to keep their jobs, right? But
sure,
they're bad on purpose. So when the robo umps do come to fruition, we're like, thank gosh, because we don't want to
Yeah.
deal with them anymore.
I still,
It's a stupid conspiracy.
I don't want the game to be perfect. I don't.
I agree.
There'll be blown calls, there will be arguments, there will be ejections, but that's baseball. To me, it's almost like, I'm a huge hockey fan as well. It's almost like trying to get rid of fights in hockey. Like, I understand why you may want to.
Yeah.
But actually, that's, it's part of the game. It's part of the DNA.
I'm not a hockey fan, and if I go to a game and there isn't a fight, I want my money back.
Right. There better be a fight. Yeah.
There better be a fight. I better see some violence, or what is the point?
Now, Bryce Harper, it's a name I think we're going to hear on Thursday night called for MVP. Especially now I'm hearing Mike Schmidt will be one of the people, announcing who the MVP winners are. Coming off one of the best, if not the best, offensive season here, recent memory in Philly. You once mentioned that you thought he was worth $400 million. Where do you rank him as far as superstars go in today's game?
It's a tough question to answer because I don't think he got enough attention this season. Now, mind you, I'm also kind of bitter. I feel like Brandon Crawford should have at least been touted a little bit more in that category. And I realized I was very Bay Area driven, but I love a resurgence here. I feel like that needs more attention. Moving on. I'm fine. I'm not bitter. But I honestly don't know if I didn't feel like we cared about Bryce Harper enough. And I don't really 100% know why. And maybe I was just in my little West Coast bubble. But I feel like he was overrated to a certain extent. And I don't even know if that's the right word. He just had a huge, you want to talk beyond just being a highly touted prospect. He was a highly touted, you're going to change the game forever, sir. So welcome to the game. That's a lot of effing pressure. So you get into the game, you're unique in your own right, but we weren't embracing who he actually was. We were embracing who we wanted him to be, which, why would we do that? Why don't we just like Bryce Harper for who he is? Even with his quirks, with the clown question bro era,
right?
Why didn't we ride that into the sunset? We should have done that. And that alone, goes to show how weird MLB is. So obviously he had the decline and everything like that. And obviously the Giants were a big name, going after him when he was a free agent. And I was writing that till the cows came home. But I feel like he superstardom, maybe it was because Shohei put on a show this year, but I feel like he's certainly up as a top 5 superstar for me. And he definitely put the numbers are certainly there. I want to see more of the Bryce Harper who he deserves to show off. And that's outside of the Baseball Reference page. I want to see him have more fun with everything, embrace, the bat flips and the weirdness and all that. So I feel like superstardom is, I think he liked kind of being on the DL a little bit more because of all the pressure that was on him. Now that pressure is off, I think he could resurge himself. So you're going to have him, Ohtani, Mike Trout, and then of course all the shortstops who are on the free agency market after they're all signed. I feel like we can have a lot of fun next year with all these WWE type of vibes and have him be a heel and have all of that. I think that'd be really, really cool. But he's always been a superstar to me. I just don't think he got the right introduction into MLB.
Now, I think part of this season, what's wild with the Phillies, you have, Bryce Harper and Zach Wheeler who could win, the MVP and Cy Young.
Right.
And the team doesn't even make the postseason. I think part of it is, if anything, like you're mentioning on the West Coast, the overlooking part, not knowing how good of a season it was, is partly because of how lousy the Phillies were. Mm-hmm. Which blows me away too. The Braves winning the World Series. There's fans here in Philadelphia. The Phillies entered the last weekend or the final week of the season, within striking distance of Atlanta. So by default, the Phillies must be close to a World Series. It's no, not at all. That mindset just blows me away.
I still, and I was talking to a player once about this, and he kind of went off about MVP voting and the baseball hall. He said there's too many fucking nerds around some of these voting things. And this is before I pressed record, but he was just, because I asked him if a specific player is going to be a Hall of Famer. And he said he deserves to be, but I'm sick of these fucking nerds being in charge of all this stuff. And obviously MVP and these types of awards should be very numbers driven. But I want the tiebreaker to be, if you want to be like a postseason team, that's fine too. But I also think that's
Right.
bullshit. I don't like that you're just like, oh, well, Bryce Harper didn't make it to the postseason, so maybe we shouldn't like count him. I don't like that. But I feel like whatever your tiebreaker is, it needs to be kind of same thing
Right.
across the board.
Now, I will say this too with Harper, and again, this is tough because this isn't always seen, especially if you're not in the Philadelphia market or at a Phillies game.
I agree. He was not on my radar a bunch this season. Yeah.
He plays to the fans like no other, and,
Yeah.
and the fans adore him. Like he'll go out, he'll do the hair flip. He wears the Philly
I love the
Fanatic
hair flip.
spikes. I mean, and he plays to it, and he's beloved. My hope or my fear is, this is a massive contract he has. He's been very vocal, but he's been correct in what he has said the last 2 years about the Phillies farm system being weak. The Phillies need to do certain things. I hope he doesn't get disgruntled to the point I want out of here, because things could get ugly quickly. But also his contract is forever.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I think he'll be 39. And, these contracts, that concerns me when we're years away down near the end of it, how to look. I just hope for right now that Dave Dombrowski and the front office are really thinking, hey, we have Harper, we have Realmuto, we have Hoskins, we have Wheeler, we have Aaron Nola, who you look at his expected ERA was much better than what
do
his
you think they're
output
going to do
was.
at shortstop, though? Because obviously we know the market. Didi Gregorius doesn't have the start. Dombrowski was vocal. He's probably not going to be the starter.
No.
That first rounder, that's his job to get during spring training.
Welcome
Maybe.
to the majors, Bryson.
Yeah.
Bryson Stott. I mean,
Yeah.
and here's the fear there, right? How are you going to be a team competing for the division? Because let's face it, the Phillies are stuck in this no man's land where they can't rebuild because there's nothing to rebuild with from the farm.
Yeah.
They have the 27th, 28th farm system ranking. They don't want to go over the luxury tax unless they're within striking distance of the World Series.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's like not like what we don't, the money that was given is like there's no real limits there, but
right. But they've also kind of said, well, there's some limits. And that's where, well, we don't want to spend frivolously and then get to the point where we're not going to reach the World Series anyway. It's going to be interesting, Jess. It really is. They need an entire left side of, the field. They need a center field. You need back end starting rotation. Yeah. I love Zach Eflin. I don't think he's going to mirror what he did this year. I love Ranger Suarez.
Yeah.
I don't think he can duplicate next year what he did this year. You need to redo the bullpen. You need a backup catcher, although I think we may have that in-house with Marchand. So there's a lot of, like, what do we do?
Well, one of my big questions, and I don't know if people are talking about it enough with the Phillies, is their defensive capabilities, because you have those three, the starting rotation here, they're all ground ball pitchers, right?
Yeah.
So you want to think about tidying up that defense. And I don't think Dombrowski really talked about that specifically. Obviously, he mentioned shortstop, of course, but as far as making it a very strong defense and just, to have that backup to repeat maybe what Wheeler could do again,
right? And
all of that. And, obviously coming from a Sonny Gray era, you want that strong defense where you're just not worried about anything. And obviously I'm spoiled watching the Olsen, the Mats, but
sure.
I also know that is so imperative to like that, and it spills over to a great starting rotation also. Yeah, defense has been a significant problem the last few seasons. They're like ranked toward the end. And I believe it was Dombrowski that even last year said, we knew we wouldn't be in the top echelon, but we didn't think it would be as bad as it was. I think part of that was Alec Boehm, who was a rookie last year, high expectations because he came off a really stellar second part of the 60-game season. I think defensively he had some issues. I think he brought those problems to the plate with him and underperformed. I think they're going to look at him at third and hope that he turns a corner. Yeah. But there's some significant concerns there, and defense is definitely one of them.
back end of the rotation.
It's a huge Costco shopping cart worth of needs that y'all need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then you saw Noah Syndergaard and what happened there today, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's wild. What was it, $21 million?
21 million just became official because or not like official.
Right.
It's not official until they tweet it out. What world do we live in? That's so crazy. But, you know, it's the physical's done. But he's never faced like any of the AL West teams, which is kind of interesting.
It is, but he hasn't. I mean, how many innings has he pitched in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's going to have to be on an innings limit, I would think, going into next season. And the Angels are in a really weird spot. I mean, I know with, you have Trout, obviously, but, Ohtani,
and
I don't know.
They never got rid of Iglesias at the trade deadline, which blew my mind.
I
actually asked David Forst that. I was like, because they brought in I personally think they had the best trade deadline, but that's just me, the A's. But Andrew Chafin, after they got him, I was like, you need a better bullpen. And Forst was like, he didn't say these words, but essentially it was a shit show of a market when it came to relievers, which is good. I think these guys deserve the monetary values and all of that. But I feel like it's such a big need now that the shit show will not stop. Just going to continue being a mess.
Well, and I think that the one name, who was it, Aaron Loop, I think the Phils have been connected to. And it's like, well, we had him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, he was brutal. It's such you roll the dice. And I think you hope that you have some internal candidates through your farm system that can take some of those spots and perform well.
Or
and
like
that's something
switch him to a bullpen role or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something the Phillies just have not been able to produce for years now, really since, the 2008 to 2011 team that went on and had some success.
Yeah.
So talking about these ridiculous salaries and big shopping lists, right? So, we're talking about this and all these moves that need to happen. But Jess, we're on the cusp of a work stoppage here. Something that hasn't happened in a quarter of a century. Are we going to see baseball in the spring?
It feels like I'm like pressing refresh on like everything because I feel like every day it's different. Unfortunately, from what I'm hearing, like the big names in the industry, like the front office execs, don't feel confident that the season is going to start. I don't want to say on time. I don't know how these things actually work in the CBA because I haven't been in the industry with the work stoppage. I've talked to Dave Stewart about it before when they had their strike, and I don't want people to twist my words. I think it's beautiful that the players feel like they're comfortable enough to express themselves through the PA of what they deserve. I die hard believe that. But I just hope that everybody's listening. The people that are in charge are listening. And the main thing that Tony Clark was talking about was, the monetary values as far as the competitive salaries and the taxes and everything like that. You want to make sure. I like the idea of a floor for sure. And I think it'd be fun to see how the A's handle that. It's like, oh wait, we're allowed to spend, like, we don't understand.
And the Orioles need to be held accountable there too.
I could see them just being like, I don't know. It's like a food pyramid and all you ate was candy.
Yes.
You still have to eat all the other things. But it'll be interesting to see how that works. And I do know, like, the competitive bonus bid, I think that's a very important factor as well, because people don't understand it as much. But you also have to remember that we can't be waiting until the trade deadline to make some of these moves. I like that part of it because it's important and all of that, but you want to start off the season being like, okay, this is what's going on. And if you know what I noticed though, you have like the Sunday night baseball games and it's always a team like the Yankees and A's heading into the season. That was going to be a game like to pay attention to. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the season, like both teams kind of suck and you're like, whatever. But I feel like that's what the overviews are. I want that. I want people to think going into the season, the Astros are going to blow everybody away. And maybe that doesn't happen. Or the Phillies come out and they surprise everybody. We want that stuff. But you want to have that even playing field at the beginning, which is why they have the competitive tax bonus and all of that. And you start out from that. I'm probably not using the exact terms. There's so many damn terms when it comes
I
to
know.
money. It's
You
just
need a law degree for it.
yeah. And it's like, who knows? Like, don't sue me if I'm not making like you guys catch what I'm throwing.
Yes.
But so it's from that. So I do love that factor, and it feels like that's the main thing is they want the competition. These guys have been playing sports their whole life. As much as they love the money, as much as they love everything, they want to win. And you want them to be happy. And if they win, they're happy. You get wins by spending money. It's not rocket science, right? But I am curious to see what the other stuff is, whether it's, like the games, the amount of games, obviously all those extra rules, what they genuinely feel about them. There could be some guys that are just like, I don't really mind, hopefully they do mind the doubleheader thing, but
yes,
the three batter minimum and stuff like that, which I feel like that one was the one that they cared the least about from what sounds
right.
Like. They were like, whatever, either way, because they knew how to kind of work around it, which was interesting and all of that. But yeah, so
yeah, I remember the previous work stoppage because the Expos were looking like they had a shot at the World Series, and then the rug got pulled out from under everybody. And baseball, it took years to come back. And you know what brought baseball back? The steroid era, which nobody wants to go through again. McGuire and Sosa.
I wouldn't hate it.
Hey, this is what the second lowest ranked World Series television view wise. For Major League Baseball.
Oh yeah,
they need to do something.
What was the batting average? It was a historic low at one point, like 220 something in like June or something. It was like I remember looking at that number like. That can't be right. Oh, it is.
Yeah. So, well, and that went up then after what was it? The sticky tape or whatever it's called. Sticky tack.
Spider tack.
Spider tack. Yeah. So
have you ever played with that stuff, Patrick? It's like
no.
I need eyelash glue like that. I actually I put it on a ball and I was holding it like this forever. And wow. I mean, I played growing up, and like I remember the exact consistency of stuff that I liked, but I don't think I could play with that much. But I understand why that could be an advantage, but good Lord, that stuff is insane.
Well, look, talking about some of these things that are impacting baseball, pace of play. Is this something we're looking for these ways to cut a minute out here, 2 minutes there? One of the most ridiculous ones to me is the intentional walk, right? Where we're not going to throw the 4 pitches. We're just going to tell the umpire, put him on first. And, to me, again, as the purist, you lose something with those 4 pitches. You never know, one gets by Real Muto or whatever, something happens, right? Big deal.
Real Muto would never.
I know. He probably the one that wouldn't miss one of those. But either way, point being, is pace of play something that, are we going to gain fans if we trim 12 minutes off of a game?
No, and I want to say like you mentioned the intentional walk thing, and I was so curious about this, so I asked so many pitchers at every level, and they all said they would rather keep it because even as a pitcher, when that could screw you over. They were like, that could literally change the game. And to know that it was a highly touted prospect, pitching prospect too, who told me, no, like if I throw the over homeboy's head and this happens, like I know that's on me, but like also that's a game changer. How different is it if like you get the yips, which is a totally different podcast. You get the yips and you're trying to throw it to first as a pitcher. How is that any different? Right. Like it's kind of like from that. But yeah, no, I don't think it makes a difference with that. And plus like, I just get the chills thinking of when they would intentionally walk Barry Bonds, like inject that into my vein. That's probably a bad term to use. Sorry. Shoot. You know what I mean?
I do. Absolutely. No, I mean, it was different. I think, yes, the game at times is slow. I think that's something though, if you're a fan, you're going to be okay with. And, yes, I would say they need to make these World Series games in particular a little bit earlier. All right. It shouldn't be 11:30 at night on the East Coast, and we're sitting
Especially
here in
now
the
that we're
fourth
getting
inning.
older, Patrick. Like I got stuff
I know,
to
right?
do, I got stuff to
I
go on.
I'm hitting 40 soon enough. So yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I think something needs to be done, but I just think trying to shave 12 minutes off of a game is just not the right move.
But like, what else can they really do if that's their genuine goal? Which okay, we know that it's out there. What all can they do? It's like the sport you can't do it to. So like,
I know,
that's
right?
why you just
But
gotta
that's the
leave it
beauty of
alone.
it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
There is no clock. I mean,
Or even
the
try to speed
NBA.
up, even try to speed up a pitcher like warming up. You want to injure him now? Good luck with that. Like,
Well,
okay.
and not only that, Jess, I don't know. At Citizens Bank Park, they have the clock pretty close to the press box where you can see it. Nobody follows that clock unless there's some special thing I'm unaware of in the press box. No one's following it.
Yeah.
So, I don't envy the position Rob Manfred's in. There's a lot of things that he needs to address and take care of. I just don't know, A, if this is one that can be taken care of.
Yeah.
And B, I'm scared based on his track record to see what he comes up with.
Yeah. And he's
to take care of it.
Experimenting. So every year it's like a different sport. It's stupid.
Right.
It's
Changing
stupid.
the distance from the mound. I think the Atlantic League is doing that. I am not.
I will say
interested.
it was one of my favorite tweets ever tweeted. It was like, oh, we wanted to market players better. So then we decided to extend the mound a foot.
Oh man. Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah. We've revolutionized baseball as you've known it.
Did it.
Now, Jess, a couple more personal questions here. Knowing what you know now about sports media and baseball, right? And it's clear as day that you are knowledgeable in this subject, and you have rightfully, in my mind, earned, as I mentioned earlier, one of these top up-and-coming spots in journalism. What advice would you go back and give yourself before you started on this journey?
I think I would try to be more authentic earlier. I'm not saying that I waited forever, and it's not just about like tweeting what's on my mind or saying what's on my mind. It's like asking the questions I'm not comfortable asking, or, showing up and then apologizing later type of stuff. And reminding myself that I belong, and telling myself like, you're on the right track, you're doing this. It's going to be a freaking bumpy ride and everything like that. And probably also like to have faith in myself that like everybody else is on their own journey. They're doing what they do, but that doesn't mean like the social media envy is a huge thing, and I would see people like posing at the World Series and everything like that. And I'm like, why am I not there? And this and that. It's like, cause this is their time. You'll get yours in a second. And mine always came around. So I think it was just reminding myself that wherever I'm at this exact moment is where I'm supposed to be. And even right now, like I'm no longer with NBC, and it's like I'm in between things, and it was scary, but like I know that's all part of what I'm supposed to be doing next and all of that. So definitely that, and just to keep chugging along and have faith in myself and really pay attention to who genuinely wants what's best for you and all of that, because that you find out rather quickly. And just, the work hard thing, I never had to tell myself to work harder because I worked very, very hard. And not just, it doesn't always have to be like on camera, social media stuff. Production work was extremely important to my career. So to not worry about some of those tasks that maybe I thought were daunting, and all of that, and even doing more than just baseball, like covering the Warriors was awesome. So definitely to open myself up to more sports, I think I would tell myself to do that. And, you're never going to grow. You're always going to be short. So stop.
Stop
trying to pretend like anything's going to change. I think I would have grown by now. Like I'm going to be 33. Like that didn't happen yet. So
the imposter syndrome is real, right?
Oh,
you're always going to feel, especially when you're early on in your career in this field, do I belong? Have I done enough? And, I think that's something that it's normal to feel. And I think also what you said, and I love this, and I preach this to all the students I teach, to the college athletes I work with, having faith, right? And knowing, as you outlined here, like my time will come. And it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but assuming I continue to put in the work and the time and I'm dedicated, my heart's in the right place, I'm doing the right things ethically, then good things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's okay to kind of have a little bit of a pity party and
I
be
was just gonna
down.
say, feel the field.
Yeah,
You gotta feel the field.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can do that for a little bit, but the important part is, all right, I'm brushing myself off. I'm taking tonight to do whatever I need to do. Tomorrow it's a new day. I'm getting back at it.
Yeah. And definitely like taking breaks too is super important. I loved that I work 24/7 for a long time, and I'm glad I didn't work 24/7 for a long time. We know the schedule, it's crazy, but
Yeah.
you really have to take some time for yourself because you get burned out. You start resenting the sport you love for a little bit, and you don't want to do that. And I feel like that's important too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of reporters. It boggles my mind. You'll be sitting there covering a game, and it'll be, again, this is pace of play. It'll be 12-8, the sixth inning. The bullpens have already been obviously into the game, and you got reporters, bitching and complaining like, "Oh man, we're going to be here all night." And it's sort of like, dude, you got into this because of how much you
Like you
allegedly
knew,
love the sport,
yeah,
right? I mean, I get it too. You're stuck. You got a plane. You got to catch. You got this going on. You're on deadline. I do get it, but it's funny. It's the same reporters that are always complaining.
yeah,
And it's really, dude, there's not a million. There's 500 students down the street at all these different universities here in Philly that would kill to have your job right now.
and they would
Shut
not
up.
be complaining.
No,
They're
they'd be
praying for
thrilled.
a 13-inning game. They're like, let's
Exactly.
go. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Jess, what is something that people on Twitter, fans or followers of you, misunderstand about you?
Ooh, I think I'm not always going to be like the comedian. I think that's important too. Like sometimes I feel like I want to tweet something like about life or a personal thing, and people will make like a smart ass comment, which I know they can say whatever they want. I feel like that's the beauty and the negative spots of social media. But like, I think they need to have a lot of grace with me because like when I like, I've dealt with a lot, like even, going through unemployment or, like I had a really tough mental health year. And even when I would tweet out some things about it, I would say like my DMs are open and people are really inappropriate in the DMs, not just like in sexual ways, but just like stuff that you shouldn't be saying after you say you want to be there for somebody who's struggling with mental health and stuff like that. So I feel like I would like to be taken a little bit more seriously in that regard. I think that's super, super important. And I'm not always going to be right with a lot of things. And I don't mean that from like a source perspective. I mean, like if I put a prediction out there of an analysis piece, that's part of it. Like speculation's definitely a thing that happens, but I'm very open about that and stuff like that. So I think those are probably the most important ones. I don't always want to be like messed with, sometimes it's just like, if I tweet something out that's important, do it. And I'm not always going to be in like one of those like angsty people who likes to dunk on people. Like that's what I like to do because I feel like I have to defend myself a lot. But that's not who I am. I have a huge heart and I'm loyal to a fault, but some of the dunking on like you guys bring that on yourselves because you ask stupid questions. Let's be honest.
There are a ton of those out there. I mean, social media is great and it's awesome because it does give a lot of people a chance to interact with us and a chance for us to share, our stories and what we're trying to get. I mean, let's be honest, without social media, our platforms may not be as popular, but on the flip side, you're so true. Like, hey, look, we're human beings and, you may just see us as a Twitter avatar, but there's stuff going on, whether it's a family issue, school issue, job issue, whatever. You can't just come at us with nonsense all the time and expect us not to, feel any of it.
Right.
So what's next, Jess? I know, you mentioned NBC Sports. What are you looking for right now? Where are you hoping to go? I mean, I hope you're trying to stay in media and particularly in baseball. What's next for you?
I want to be the next MLB commissioner. It's going to take me a while to get there.
You got pace of play to deal with.
Yeah. I don't 100% know, but I'm lucky enough where I have a lot of good leads right now. It's the best time to take a break and remind myself that like my job's great, but it's not my life. So that's something that I've definitely been working on as well.
Very important delineation.
Yes. But I will be staying in media. Hopefully these next couple of things work to fruition. I have amazing people in my corner that are helping me with that. Actually, some meetings this week. So hopefully I can announce some stuff soon, but more than likely I'll be back in MLB media next season for sure. So good things happening. And if not, there's always something else that God has planned for me. So it's fine.
I love the attitude, Jess. And I think for me and for many, many others, we want these meetings this week to go well.
Yeah.
And for you to be around, because again, we need people like you in the sport and in media.
Thank you.
You bring a lot to the table, and I think that's important. Where can people find you on social media?
At Kleinschmidt JD on Twitter, Jessica Kleinschmidt on Instagram. I'm trying to do more Instagram stuff. I feel like every day, like you can't really differentiate what's the more popular social media platform. But I feel like Twitter is definitely always great, especially during the off season with all the rumors. But Instagram, I'm trying to freshen up my content there. So those are the two main spots where you can find me.
Jessica Kleinschmidt, you are awesome. And I appreciate you taking the time here tonight to speak with me, the Philadelphia Baseball Review podcast. You're great. And going forward, please stay in touch. Anything I can do to help you out, I absolutely will.
Thank you so much.
All right. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation I had there with Jess Kleinschmidt. She's incredible. She is going places. Her combination of wit, humor, and knowledge of the game is she's the total package. Follow her. Definitely follow her. Now, while you're doing that, subscribe to our podcast also. Hop on iTunes or Spotify. Look us up if you haven't yet and subscribe. And if you can also, hit the like button. Give us a review. All of that helps. Also on Twitter, be sure to follow me if you haven't yet. P. Gordon PBR. All kinds of information there about the Philadelphia baseball scene as it relates from high school on up to the Phils. And then lastly, our newsletter. We release it 2-3 times in the off season per week. You can subscribe to that by visiting PhiladelphiaBaseballReview.com. Scrolling down to the bottom of the page, just put your email address in and you'll be linked. You'll be getting all of the off-season info that you need as it relates to baseball across the Quaker City. So for that, I'm Patrick Gordon. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Philadelphia Baseball Review podcast.